Okay, so first of all, hello everyone. Thank you, Yaron, for inviting me to be part of this lecture. And well, my idea was to travel to Israel this year, but well, for everyone, things have changed a lot, and since it is not possible, and thanks to this platform, I'm still able to, do these presentations for you. My idea was to go to Israel to visit some of the rhino companies, well, some of these companies using rhino, and of course some universities where grasshopper and rhino is on the curriculum. So, well, I'll go to the next one. And my name is Carla. I'm an industrial designer. I've been using Rhino for more than 10 years, and I never thought about working for McNeel, the company that develops Rhino. But I'm quite excited to be part of this team. And today, my goal today is to provide you new tools to develop and present your work. That's why the title of this is Digital Tools for Designers. So I want you to probably learn something new about Rhino. And I don't know if you're interested, if you want to test it. For sure, I'll give you some links so you can download, you can test, and you can find a lot of material. So now let's start through this fast tour through McNeel and how we work, and then I'll explain a little more in deep about Rhino 6 and our latest developments. So first of all, McNeel's headquarters, our company, is in Seattle, but we have regional offices in Barcelona, in Miami, in Seoul. The regional office of Barcelona takes care of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We are 100 people working for McNeel, mainly between development and support. We don't have a marketing team. Actually, everything we do, we invested everything we make out of licenses, we invest in our own development and for providing tech support to anyone and for free. So we also have more than 1,000 development partners around the world that they develop plugins for, well, other tools for designers and architects. We have a lot of resellers and also authorized Rhino trainers around the world. So you can always find someone that can teach you Rhino and Grasshopper. And we not only develop Rhino, we develop Flamingo, Penguin, Bongo, which is for animation, Brazil, that it's also for rendering, Grasshopper, that I know that some of you already know, and Kangaroo. And I'm going to talk a little more about Kangaroo in a while. So what is Rhino? Rhino is mainly a surface modeling tool, a 3D modeling software for designers, architects, engineers, and other professionals. Many Rhino users use only a small portion of what Rhino has to offer. And as I mentioned before, one of my goals today is that you discover something new from this software. And then Grasshopper. Grasshopper, as you might know, is a graphical algorithm editor that is integrated into in Rhino. And sometimes, if you haven't used it before, it sounds pretty strange. And I like to show this and make this comparison. So I say that Grasshopper is like making coffee. On one side, on the left side, you have parameters, these little boxes that contain information. In the middle, you have the action. In this case, when you're making coffee and you have water, coffee, and energy you want to infuse. And finally, on the right side, you have your result or your output, which is black coffee in this case, for example. So this is just to give you like a quick example, but I know that some of you are working with it like a lot, so you already know this. And I'm going to show you this short video. And as I mentioned before, Grasshopper is now included in Rhino 6, so you no longer need to download from the Grasshopper website. It ships with the software, and it has the same interface, but it has been, we've been working a lot, making some new tools for it, and right now we're having a lot of new components and working of them. We have architects working with Grasshopper, we have designers, we have engineers, and well, a lot of these industries around. So we are 400,000 users around the world, between students, professionals, teachers, school, and developers. And why are they using Rhino? They're using Rhino because it's not only a 3D modeling tool, it's used not only for design, it's used for analysis, for reverse engineering, a lot for 3D printing, CNC milling, simulation. Also, it's used by big companies just to read files for different softwares. I know that some of you are using, for example, SolidWorks. So an interesting thing about Rhino is that we make our API really accessible to anyone, so you can easily communicate with Rhino. And I'm sure that you'll find a way to import those files or also export to different softwares, for example, Illustrator, SolidWorks, and also you can generate STL files for 3D printing and much more. And right now, what we've been focused a lot is on rendering and visualization, and we are having a lot of new users that are looking and finding like a great option to present their work using Rhino and do animations, as we will see now. And I'm going to show you some of the sectors that use Rhino, and all these images are products developed using the software. For example, this is product design. It's used a lot for jewelry design. Also, like Adidas is one of our big customers, a big company using Rhino, and is using Rhino and Grasshopper not only for the sole, but also for the uppers right now. And BMW is another company using Rhino and Grasshopper. This was a presentation done some years ago, and they were presenting this new technology that they call 4D printing, and they want to print sensors on the seats of the car, on the panels, and much more. So this was a really interesting project done with Rhino some years ago. This is also in between exhibition, design, architecture, like an ephemeral structure, and art. So this is done by Olafur Eliasson, which, well, he's an artist too. And it was kind of a car. It was presented on a car event, but it was a structure that you were able to go in and see. This is also another example of what you can do with Rhino, and this is a sculpture done by Rinus Roelofs. He's also, well, he's a mathematician, but he's also a teacher and well, an artist, and uses Rhino and Grasshopper. This is also an example for architecture, and it's done by Arthur Mamumani. It was done for Burning Man in 2018. So I don't know if you've seen this before, but it was completely made with Rhino. UN Studio is another big company that is creating all these beautiful buildings, and it's one of our major clients in that sense. This is from Jean Nouvel, and also another example. And of course, we're not only in design and architecture, but also in marine design. And this is an example that was presented by Zaha Hadid some years ago. And let's move on to talk about our ecosystem. And I find this really important because as Rhino users, is it's really interesting to know all these different platforms or where to find the right information. And I'll start with Food for Rhino. Food for Rhino is our it's a platform where you can find all the plugins and applications and other resources for Rhino and Grasshopper. You can download. Also, you can find Grasshopper definitions, tutorials, textures. And you can search using some filters, and depending on the industry, you'll find maybe some plugin or some set of tools that will be more adapted to what you need. So it's interesting that you know this website, and of course, a lot of this is open source, it's free. You can also upload your own tools, and maybe in the future, if you want to sell a plugin, of course, you can do it through this. And let's move on to see some of the examples that you can find here and that I think that might be really interesting for designers and interior designers. So for example, paneling tools. Paneling tools will help you. It's a plugin that helps generate 2D and 3D cellular patterns and populate them over a rectangular grid. In this example, well, usually we hear about paneling tools and we think that it's for architects, but no, actually it's being used a lot by jewelry. Jewelry design, and you can find some examples on this slide. And then we have another plugin that might be interesting if you're 3D printing, and it's Crystalline. Crystalline is an open source project for creating lattice structures using Rhino and Grasshopper. We find these lattice structures in nature, and we've been studying them for years, and maybe we can now design having them in consideration. It's for creating lightweight designs, reducing materials, cost. You can also generate a design that has like energy absorption, heat transfer. You can also benefit from impact protection, reduce vibration, and much more. An interesting thing is that you can do everything inside Rhino's environment. You don't have to export to any third-party software. It's everything done inside Rhino Grasshopper. And another example of the plugins you can find, for example, Visual Arc. And Visual Arc is our kind of BIM solution. It's a plugin that adds architectural features and parametric architectural objects. And it's really helpful for doing all this 3D modeling and for 2D documentation. It is also used a lot by interior designers because you can have doors that changing just 2 parameters can grow or can be modified, and that will save you a lot of time when doing a design. Also on windows or maybe sofas or more thing, and you can create your own objects. Land design is for designing gardens, green spaces, and landscape. I'm going to run this short animation. So in this case, it's a terrain, and you can start like editing in a simple way. Something interesting, well, you can also do sections. You can find any type of species, like you can find any type of plant, and you have on the lower part how it will be represented on your model or your, I don't know, 2D documentation. It has like a really big library. It's super easy to add all these species. You can also import terrains from Google, which makes it like really handy. And of course, change the way it looks to present to your clients. So I'll move on to the next slide. And it's Hologram. Hologram is for creating mixed reality experiences from Rhino. You can stream geometry, materials, and selections in your Rhino model to your mobile phone or your HoloLens. And this plugin is changing the way we are assembling, for example, in the lower picture, because just with the use of this HoloLens, you're able to assemble these structures without having 2D documentation. So it's changing completely the workflow of designers, architects, and of course, like it's being mixed reality, you're able to stream your 3D model in an actual like space. And finally, just to finish with this, I want to talk about Shapediver. Shapediver provides 3D visualization for product configurators. You can upload your Grasshopper definition, and you can let your customer, like your clients, like experience and personalize them in this simple 3D interface. So this is an example of, I mean, like I can design a sofa, and I can have like some of this to play with. So I can change the height or maybe the length, or I don't know, the color. You can, and everything will be uploaded, and it's quite simple. So for personalizing designs, for customizing, it's a really interesting thing to try. So this, I want to give you like a fast tour through what you can find in Food for Rhino, because a good thing about McNeel is that we provide free access to our documentation, so you can build your own tools and also share them with others. And these are just some examples. So now, after talking about Food for Rhino, where you can find the plugins and everything, I'll talk about this course. Discourse.mcneel.com is our forums. There you can find different categories, different topics. You can ask any question, simple or complex. If you're working with Grasshopper, if you're learning to use a plugin, I'm sure that not only our development team and tech support team will help you, but also other users that might be having the same workflow. Also, it's interesting, as part of the tech support team, I get a lot of questions about people usually ask me like, hey Carla, I'm using Rhino, I'm an architect, and I want to buy a new computer. Which computer should I buy? So we have a special section about hardware. We talk about graphic cards, and it's really interesting. So if you have like any question, before, you know, like searching online and on Google and everything, I'll suggest to go to this course, because you'll find everything. And if you don't find it, you can just start a new topic. Then we have the developer.rhino3d.com, and this is a platform where you can find all our documentation. So if you're interested in developing a plugin, here is you'll find everything you need. And let's talk a little bit about the blog, because it's also important. We do a lot of online webinars, we do workshops, trainings. We also post job offers, interesting projects. So if you're doing something with Grasshopper and you want to share it with our community, like please just send us an email. And for sure, like if it's done with Rhino, if you have like a nice image to show, for sure we'll share it with all the community. So it's interesting to visit the blog. And these are the websites if you want to take note of anyone: foodforrhino.com, discourse.mcneel.com, developer.rhino3d.com, and our blog that you can also find it on our website, which is rhino3d.com. And finally, if you have like an Instagram account, a Facebook account, or if you're on YouTube, because right now I think everyone is learning from YouTube, like go and visit our channels, because you'll find a lot of tutorials to learn. And right now we've been doing a series of webinars for people that want to learn Python, the programming language. So it's the basics. If you want to learn a new programming language, it's there and for free for all our community. And on Instagram, we have interesting projects, we have challenges, tips and tricks. So it's something good to follow. And of course, on Facebook, we'll share the same blog post and other events coming on. And just to finish with McNeel, and for you to understand how a company, a software company works, is our way of doing things is collaborative working. We want users to be involved in our process. So we are constantly receiving emails, phone calls, and information from all of you. And what we usually do is like we get all this bug reports, or we get some wishes, people that tell us, hey, we want this implemented in Rhino. So what we do as part of the tech support, we create reports that go to our development team, and our development team will build or fix any kind of bug, and we'll send it back to us for testing. And also we'll send it to the user to see if that fits their needs. And finally, it will come out as a service release. So we involved our users in all this process of creating new tools. And that's why it's so interesting to do these presentations, to have people testing the software. And now let's talk about interesting things. What's new in Rhino 6? I'm not sure if you're using it right now, but if not, I'll give you a link after the presentation so you can download for free. And the good thing about our evaluation version is that it lasts 90 days. It's 3 months of free Rhino. It's the same version as the educational or commercial. And even after those 90 days, it will continue to work, but you won't be able to save what you're doing. You're not able to generate files, but still will work great for learning and well, for opening files from maybe what you've been working before. And the first thing I want to mention is the Rhino 6 runs on both platforms, on Windows and Mac. So the interface is it's kind of similar. It still has its difference because Mac users are really used to their Mac interface, so they don't want it to look like the Windows one. But actually you can find all, and your same license will run on Mac and Windows, and that's a great thing. Not at the same time. You cannot have the two computers running your license at the same time, but it's good that you'll be able to change. And this is Kangaroo. Well, I mentioned before that Grasshopper is already included in Rhino 6, and Kangaroo is a live physics engine for interactive simulation, form finding, optimization, and constraint solving. It is also included in Rhino 6. So you can do all this. This is an interesting video. You can play a little with this kind of simulations and learn more about physics. Okay, I'll go to the next one. And we know that rendering and visualization is something really important because we need it to be fast. We need to present our work the best way we can and discuss and make decisions based on this presentation. So we've been doing a lot of changes to rendering and visualization inside Rhino. So for example, on this right side panel, you can control everything. You can control the materials, the color. On the render panel, you can control lighting. Everything is in a single place, making it easier to actually manage. And we also have a new display mode that is the ray trace. So what you see and you can start zooming and panning, and it will start rendering little by little. And here is, I think they're changing the color to make it look like gold. And yeah, so actually it's quite realistic, and reflections and refractions have been improved a lot since the latest one. And we have also a big material library that is included in Rhino 6 with ready-to-use materials and real-scale textures. So you can just drag and drop these materials to your model, and the texture will be applied. So this comes with Rhino. You don't need to download from another software. Everything is there. Easy to find, and you can also create this little tags if you're doing some project and search for them, so you can have this organized in a better way. And we also have the rendering panel, as I mentioned before, where you can control almost everything when rendering. And let's talk a little bit about documentation. And we've refined many parts of the documentation workflow, because we know that modeling is just one part of the whole design process. We've added multiple fonts, text is well oriented toward readers, and you can easily edit by double clicking. So it's quite simple. If you're using AutoCAD, if you're using SolidWorks, you'll see that it works in a similar way, and it's quite easy. Go to the next one. And make2d is one of those commands that are used a lot for when doing documentation. And right now, this command has been completely rewritten, and it has hidden line layers and much more. Like, details are really accurate. And it's a great option when you're doing, for example, manuals or product catalogs, because it will give you this 2D image of your model. And finally, one of the greatest things about Rhino 6 is that now we have a new licensing management system, and it's called the Cloud Zoo. So you don't longer need to memorize any license key. It will be on the cloud. And that also allows you to work at university, work at home with the same license key. You can access to Rhino as you access to the Gmail with your email and password. It's super simple. And right now, because of this situation that we're going through, a lot of our customers have changed to use the Cloud Zoo, because it allows them to work from home in an easy way. So it's good. And well, this is the website, www.rhino3d.com/download. There you can download Rhino 6 for Mac or Rhino 6 for Windows, and also training guides and much more. So we've talked about Windows Mac, we've talked about Kangaroo presentation, the Cloud Zoo. And now, before I do a little demo, I want to show you, it's a preview of what we are working on right now. And I know that a lot of people don't know this, but let's go through this. We're currently working on what will become Rhino 7. And Rhino 7, well, right now it's called Work in Progress. So we released Rhino 6 in 2018 and Rhino 6 for Mac in last year. And we're moving on to Rhino 7. If you want to know a little bit about the Grasshopper history, before being Grasshopper 1, it was called Explicit History, and it started as a project in 2007. And it was called explicit history because it has to do a lot with the record history command that we have in Rhino, and I'll try to show you that once we move on to the software. And these are some of the new developments, and I'll go to explain each one. We have a new command that it's called quad remeasure, and this command is what it does is it's a new tool on this work in progress that converts B-reps, extrusions, surfaces, and mesh objects into a mesh made only by quadrangles. And quad meshes are extremely useful for analysis, reverse engineering, and subdivision modeling. They will flow along the surface of the original object and also align with sharp features and edges. As you can see here, this is what a mesh will look like, and after running the quad remeasure command, you'll see these quadrangles and this cleaner mesh, easier to manage and to edit. So this is how it looks like right now on the work in progress. You can control the number of quads, how they adapt to the surface to maintain a curvature, and you can use the adaptive size or the adaptive quad count. Also, how you respect the surface edges, you can use the strict or the smart option. You can also use curves to guide on a direction and show how this quad should flow on the surface. And also it detects hard edges, and you can preview and much more. So this is new in our work in progress, and I'll show you how it works right now. So now it's creating all these quads, it's changing the number. And you can compare how it looks with a quad remeasure and how it looked before. So it makes it really simple, for example, for UL redesign. And later using the sub-T command to edit and create complex shapes and organic shapes in a simple way. So you can go selecting faces, and you can save these selections for later, for further editing. So this group of faces can be saved, and you can have them on the right panel. So this is a preview of how it works. And now I'll talk about sub-D. And well, Rhino sub-D is a new object, it's a new technology and a new user experience. Sub-D objects are high precision splines surfaces. They can create creases, sharp or smooth corners, and also holes. It is designed to quickly model and edit complex shapes as the ones you can see on the right side of this slide. And these Rhino sub-D surfaces are predictable, they are measurable, and they are manufacturable. And that's really important to mention, because it's not only to view, but it's actually to produce all your products. And some of the commands that we have right now, we have well, sub-D primitives. Actually, you can start with a simple box and start editing, selecting faces, and create complex shapes. We have commands that probably you've never heard before: bridge and stitch and slide, or reflect, which is kind of a mirror but for sub-D objects. And unlike traditional mesh mesh-based SUBD implementations, Rhino SUBD objects are not subdivided mesh objects. The Rhino SUBD user experience is exactly the same as with Rhino nerves and a mesh object, but you have like new commands. So right now, for example, as I mentioned before, you can start with a simple primitive, a box in this case. Sorry. Start selecting these faces, and with the help of the gumball, just like drag. You can also select edges, points, and SUBD objects will be supported in all Rhino export formats that support either meshes or NURBS, for example, step object and STL. So these are like the command line options, and from this mesh you get a SUBD object. And you can control the corners. So using the same command will give you a completely different result. And of course, for example, if you can start merging these different faces and much more. Or you can also create holes if you start deleting them. Well, this is pretty similar to what we've seen before. Selecting, edges. Now you can select a loop. And of course, you can then convert the SUBD objects into nerves, which is interesting. You can change this. So right now it's nerves. And I think I have one more. Well, actually, this explains how the SUBD friendly command line option works. And actually, when you're drawing this this curve to create a SUBD object, you need to mark the SUBD friendly yes when creating the curve. So well, you can edit as you do normally. And once you run the revolve command of this curve, the resulting object, if you choose the SUBD friendly, will be a SUBD object. So right now, we've already seen you can start like editing, selecting edges, faces, and more. And also, we have initial Grasshopper SUBD support, so you can find some components for working with SUBD. If you want to start trying, this is in our work in progress. And other kind of experiments we're doing now with the fatten command. This is quite new. So you're, I think, the first one to know about this command that it's called fatten. I think we've showed this like just a couple of times. It's quite new. And let's talk about a little bit about cycles. Since the Rhino work in progress of 2015, which now is Rhino 6, the cycles render engine is included. This engine is a GPU accelerated renderer, and it's a physically based production renderer, as you can see here. And right now Rhino 6 and Rhino 7 has cycles included. And what's interesting about is that we're now working and implementing this in our library material, the physically based rendering, as we know as PBR materials. And it's this method for shading and rendering that provides more accurate representation of how lights interact with surfaces. So actually what you see is some of these examples of these materials that will be included in the material library of Rhino 7, and right now it's in the Rhino work in progress. So here's some examples using using cycles and the PBR materials. And let's talk about mesh intersection. And the new intersection is designed to be more tolerant of overlapping mesh areas, as well as more tolerant of adjacent edges and superimposed vertices. So right now we are working and rewriting this command. This is on Grasshopper, how the old routine missed some areas and how new routines and some examples were doing work. We've been doing text field improvements, also working on the layout panel. And this is really interesting when you're interior designers and you or product designers, and you start generating these 3DM files that contain, I don't know, 10, 50, 100 layouts. It's interesting to have a panel on the right side where you can manage all of them and control for printing and much more, and visibility. So this is also included in our work in progress. You can modify, create, print, and do much more. As you can see here, this is a preview of how it looks like, and it will look in Rhino 7. And we're about to finish, but a couple of things more. We've included single stroke fonts. This is great news for all the CAM users. And these are also called engraving fonts and are useful when performing machining or drawing operations, and avoid like having closed loops and slow down any marking process or cut holes on materials. So this is also included in the work in progress. We also have gradient hatches, and well, this is more for illustrative purposes, but you can now run the test gradient hatch, and you'll have like some command line options. And it supports two types of gradients, linear and radial. You can select different colors, and this, for example, and the number, you can select like multiple color stops. For example, in this, it starts with green, that goes to red, to purple and blue, or you can repeat a gradient. Layer book is for doing kind of a presentation doing Rhino, what actually you create these different layers with instructions that you can go following, and it works like a presentation. And Rhino VR is a project, but it's actually a way to show VR developers how they can use Rhino as a platform rather than exporting to Unity or any other software. So what you need is Rhino 6, the Rhino work in progress, the HTC Vive or Oculus Rift, and actually like really important hardware. You need really good hardware to make this run really good. But actually, and I've been talking about this with Yaron, it's interesting, and right now what we need is probably VR projects to show interiors, to see our models if we're not able to go to to see the product in reality. So right now, oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Sure, sure. I'll move now to Rhino, and I'll show some of the possibilities of grasshopper, and also for you to understand the concept and why is it so important, and the advantages of parametric design. So I'm about to finish with this, and then we move to Rhino so we can see a little more. And also, really important, I'll leave you some links where you can find free tutorials to start working, and also material. We have a lot of material. If you need more, I'll give you my email so you can ask me any question, or I can provide you more things to learn depending on the projects that you're doing. So okay, so well, this is a little bit of Rhino VR, as I mentioned, and just to finish, I'm going to talk about two new frameworks. One is Rhino Insight, and the other is Jack. Rhino Insight allows you to have Rhino and Grasshopper embedded in other products. This, what it does is that, for example, in this case, we have Rhino and Revit working at the same time. So what you change on Grasshopper, if you edit, change some parameter, it will be immediately updated in the Rhino and also on Revit. So for some of you that are working with softwares that are not quite flexible, this could be an interesting option to stream geometry and also apply the same changes on both. So right now we're doing some samples. You can find some repository samples for Revit, AutoCAD, BricsCAD, Unity. I think there's one for SolidWorks too. And well, it runs on 64-bit window application. And of course, it works with point clouds, curve meshes, and more. And if you want more information on our forum, this course, there's this link, the Serengeti Insight, where you can find all, and these are some of the softwares that we have like access to their SDK, and we can have Rhino as an add-on or a plugin running. And we can, what it allows us is to, in a fast way, communicate between softwares, edit, and do much more. So it's actually changing the workflow for a lot of our users. This is some examples, and this is an example in Unity. I'll run it like really fast. So right now on the right side, what you see is Grasshopper. And what actually it's being modified on Grasshopper is preview on Unity. Oops. And finally, just to end, and because you're using Grasshopper, is Yak. Probably you've seen this window before. And an interesting thing is that when you open a definition that contains different plugins, it will warn you. It will come up and tell you, you need to install this version of this plugin. You're missing this other. So it's really interesting. It's working, and it's making well, for everyone, like our life much easier. So this is, well, how it works. It starts downloading, for example, components, and all of these things are right now also on our website on rhino3.com/download, and you can test them if you download the work in progress, which is also called Serengeti build. It's the same, because Serengeti is a section in our forum. Well, actually, Serengeti was named because of the largest Africa savanna where rhinos grow. So it's where you can find all these different topics of our work in progress and what we're doing, and what we want is feedback. We want people to test and to show us a little more of what they're missing. So this was the presentation. Here is my email. Also, if you have any question or anything, you can go to techeu@mcneel.com. We can send you tutorials if you're looking for. If you have like any problem when running Rhino or Grasshopper, please contact us. And these are our, well, the main website and also the YouTube channel where you can find tutorials. So I'm going to move now to Rhino. Okay, just a second. I'll open it. So how are you doing? Are you okay? It's a little long session, but I'm almost done. And also, I don't want to give you a lot of information. I don't want you to feel lost. My intention is that you learn something new and a new way to use Rhino today. So, okay, it's opening. Okay, I'll close this for a second. Hide everything. And the first thing that I wanna mention, and when I talked about Grasshopper, was the record history. So I'll do something really simple. I'll do some weird shape just to show you. Okay, now I'll do a revolve. I'll run the revolve command. Right now what I have is this object. And what I did was record its history. So if I do any change, it will be automatically updated. And this was the starting point of the Grasshopper project, what was called explicit history. So we wanted, right now, how Rhino works, and if you're working with SolidWorks, that's a different. That's the main difference, right? If, for example, I'm doing this design and suddenly my client or my teacher tells me that I need to change and it needs to be smaller, what I'm going to do is probably I'll have to start from scratch on Rhino and do everything smaller. What Grasshopper does is you can have these dimensions as parameters, sliders, and you can change in an easy way the size of this project without going to model this from scratch. And it starts with this command. So I'm going to show you, as you can see, this is Rhino 6. Before opening Grasshopper, I'm just going to show you a few things that might be really handy. And I'll turn on. Okay. Now this is. Okay. So for example, do you hear me well? Sorry. No, no, actually, record history has been there for a long time, and but it's really it's like the basic, like the foundation of Grasshopper. So if you're running any command, revolve, loft, and you really want to remember all these points for further editing, what you need to do is like mark this. So it should be selected, and it should be like light blue when working with these lines, but it has nothing to do. It's just for Rhino, not when working with Grasshopper. So okay, before moving to Grasshopper, for example, some really handy things is that we have new display modes. Arctic is one of them. If I'm going to show my teacher or my client a preview of my design and I don't want to have any material, this could be really handy to show any type of design. And we have a new one that is ray traced. So it will start rendering until I stop. But first, I'm going to, here on the right side, we can find all these different panels. And on the materials panel, okay, I can, for example, import from this big material library that it's included in already in Rhino 6. And I'm going to paint. I can see the preview. So I'll just pick anyone just to show you ray trace. I can drag and drop, or I can select and right click to assign. And right now, if I go to ray trace, it's a little bit different regarding the render mode. But the good thing is that I can stop the rendering whenever I want to. If it's okay for me to just present a draft, I can stop at this point and do a view capture to file. And if I want to see the different display mode options, I just click on the perspective view and I can change, for example, to technical. Or I'll go back to render to show now the snapshot panel. And right now we have I have already saved states of my model. And if you don't have this panel, you can go to the gear and search for it, activate it with a check. I have the check because it's already open, and I'm going to show you how to save a new one. So the first icon on this panel is Save As, and I'll rename this snapshot as Snapshot Color. I'll click on OK. I'll select Layer, Slide, everything that I want to save, and I have it here. So right now I'll do an animation, is this icon. I have some options. I'll click OK, and I'll play my animation full screen, so I can show my client how this product works and how it rotates to create some diffused lighting. I can also change the view, maybe to show the back or the side. Go back. And might be an interesting option to discuss a design. So it's here, it's on snapshots, and just to end, I want to show little tricks. So for example, I have this really thin cable, and if I go to properties, I'll find these icons below, and I'll click thickness to add thickness to my wire. So I'll click on, and I'll increase the value. It doesn't matter actually, it's just for visualization, it won't change my geometry, and I can always go back to uncheck the option and go back to what it was before. Finally, another interesting thing, I can also apply decals, interesting for interior designers when you have I don't know, paintings or maybe a logo you want to add to your design, and shot linings. So I'll show you how shot linings work. I'll set it on and I'll need to select a curve, a vase curve. I'll go to the display to preview my curves because they were unselected. It will appear listed here. I can change the name. I will now change the value. I first need to select the curve on my panel. And right now it's unnamed, but I can set this radius to 0.8 so it will be more clear. And yes, it's bigger. I can change the shape, and it creates a gap on this surface. So for product designers, this might be a really helpful option. So I'll go back to uncheck my curves because I don't want to see it on this displayed mode, which is Arctic. And finally, let's go to talk a little more about Grasshopper. So I'm going to open Grasshopper. And yes, so when you're working with just one screen, what I recommend is to drag the window to the right side if you're using Windows. So you'll have half Grasshopper and half screen of Rhino. I will drag my panels. I can also close them and choose the perspective view. So this is what I see when I open Grasshopper. I see my working space that it's called Canvas, where I can start to drag these parameters, points, curves, or my components. And I can also write the name of the component and a list will be displayed. I'll delete this for the moment, and well, it's really simple. It has like a menu bar, it has little tabs with families and subfamilies of tools. I can display more if I click on that black box that appears below, and I'll open a file to play and show you some other tools. So right now what I have here is a Vike wheel, and I can see that on my Rhino viewport, but I have my definition on the right side in Grasshopper. So it's organized in little groups, and I'm using bifocals that you can download from Food for Rhino. That might be really handy when you're explaining Grasshopper to beginners. Right now, just by changing the radius of my inner circle, I'll see how that preview updates in Rhino. So right now it's growing, or I can make it smaller. And the good thing is that I don't have to go back to Rhino, select the curve, do the pipe again. It's already there to update. So it saves me a lot of time. I can also edit the number of spokes. And of course I can edit the values, increase or lower the number, also the outer tide. And I'll let you play with this definition with a little more time, so I'll share this with you and also the video. And yeah, you can also change, for example, the shape. And the interesting thing about Grasshopper is that it's like writing a recipe. So as I mentioned before with the coffee example, you have the ingredients here and you can modify them without having to model the whole product from scratch. I can also edit the thickness, and it depends on how I write my definition. So yeah, everything has little titles, little groups, so it will be really easy to play with and experiment. If you have any question of how something works or why is it not working well, you can send me an email. And at the end, I can bake all of this and send it to what it's going to happen is that if I bake this wheel, I'll be able to edit on Rhino. I'll be able to move this or scale, and it will appear gray as any geometry, any model that I do in Rhino. So yes, these are the set of tools that I have that I can use, and I can start dragging them to my canvas and start connecting them to see how they work. And it of course will save me a lot of time if later I need to edit or do any change to my design. And I will really like to maybe do another session more focused on parametric design and Grasshopper. So let's see how this one goes, and we can start preparing a next one focus only on this subject. And yeah, on these tabs you'll also see the plugins that you have installed. In this case I have Ladybug and Honeybee and Kangaroo, but you'll see probably you won't have them on Grasshopper because you need to download from Food for Rhino first. And just to finish, let's go to our website where I'll show you the two options to download the evaluation version. So I'll try to open a new window, rhino3d.com, and under the download section you'll find an option for Windows and an option for Mac. This is the evaluation version. It will work for 90 days. It has the same commands as the educational or commercial license, but after 90 days it will stop saving, but it will work great for learning purposes and as a viewer. On the Learn section we'll find the user guide, the level 1 training manual and the level 2. And if we click on the Grasshopper category, we'll find some tutorials. And really, one that I recommend a lot is the industrial design tutorial. Might be really handy when doing furniture. Our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/rhino3d, you'll find more information about what we've seen today. sub-D, quadri measure, Rhino Insight, also getting started for Rhino, for Mac, and the Grasshopper Basics with David Rutten, his developer. So you can find all of this on Rhino 3D YouTube channel. And finally, if you want more information about Grasshopper parametric design examples, you just go to grasshopper3d.com. On the gallery, you'll find all these amazing projects done by companies using Grasshopper and users, not only for architecture, also for jewelry. I think on the next page we'll find some chairs done also with Grasshopper. And well, you can search and see other projects, and if you're interested, also create an account and upload the ones you're working on. So I'll see if I can prepare some material for our next section, probably more focus on parametric design and Grasshopper. We can probably talk a little more about computer science and basic stuff to start learning Grasshopper. We can also do some examples for product design, as the bike wheel that I showed before. And I don't know, let's see how it goes. And if not, I'm not able to travel to Tel Aviv, maybe I can do an online session for you, explaining a little more about the history and doing some exercise in Rhino and compare workflows with Grasshopper. So I think this was all that I had planned for today. So thank you very much for inviting me to join your class and do this lecture. I hope you learned something new and well, different ways to use these tools. So thank you, and I'll leave you here my email in case you need more information, a particular tutorial. If you have some wish, you can also send that to tech.eu@mcneel.com, our website and YouTube channel for more information. It's hard to do this session online when I don't have any feedback from you, but if you have any question, please send it to my email. Thanks a lot, and until the next one.